In the middle of the Colorado desert, there's a place that barely exists in most people's mental maps. There are no tourists, no curious visitors, and almost no one who enters ever returns to the life they once knew. From a distance, it looks like just another concrete complex lost among dry, silent mountains. Empty roads stretch across miles of barren land until they reach a cluster of low buildings surrounded by electrified fences, underground sensors, and armed watchtowers. But what exists inside is not just a prison. It is something many describe as the most extreme experiment ever conducted on human isolation. This place is called ADX Florence, and for many of the men who live there, the world simply stopped existing. The prison sits near the small town of Florence, in the state of Colorado, in the United States. A place so quiet that even the local population rarely speaks about what happens just a few miles away. But since the 1990s, the complex has become well known within a very specific world, the American federal prison system. Because ADX Florence was built with one clear purpose: to contain individuals considered impossible to control, criminals who, according to the government, represent an extreme risk even inside other maximum security prisons. Serial killers, leaders of criminal organizations, international terrorists, men who, even behind bars, continue to command crimes, manipulate other inmates, or maintain networks of power. Before ADX existed, many of these prisoners were scattered across different penitentiaries throughout the country. But the problems were constant. Riots, attacks on guards, internal conspiracies. In some cases, inmates were still able to run criminal operations from inside prison walls. So the US government made a different decision: to create a prison designed not only to punish, but to completely eliminate any form of influence. A prison built around one simple concept: total isolation. When ADX Florence opened in 1994, it quickly earned a nickname that still sends chills through experts and journalists. It became known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. But there is a crucial difference. Alcatraz was famous for preventing physical escape. ADX Florence was designed to prevent something far deeper: human contact. From the moment anyone arrives at the facility, it becomes clear that this place does not function like a typical prison. There are no large yards filled with inmates, no groups walking together, no conversations echoing through corridors. Everything is silent, meticulously silent, and that is because life inside ADX is built on one fundamental principle: each inmate lives completely separated from the others. Most prisoners spend around 23 hours a day alone inside a single cell. And this is not an ordinary cell. It is essentially a concrete box. The bed is concrete, the table is concrete, the stool is concrete. Everything is molded directly into the structure of the cell to prevent anything from being dismantled, broken, or turned into a weapon. The door is a heavy metal slab with a small slot through which food is passed. 3 times a day, no contact, no conversation, no eye contact. Inside the cell, there is only what is necessary to survive: a small steel toilet, a sink, an artificial light controlled from the outside, and a window. But calling it a window might be an exaggeration. It is just a narrow slit in the concrete, positioned in such a way that the inmate cannot see the outside world. The opening allows a small amount of natural light to enter, enough for the prisoner to know whether it is day or night, but not enough to see landscapes, not enough to see people, not enough to remember that a world exists beyond those walls. For decades, experts in prison architecture have studied the design of ADX Florence. and many agree that every detail was carefully engineered to control the human environment completely. Corridors are arranged so inmates almost never cross paths. Doors are operated remotely. Cameras monitor every angle. Sensors detect any unusual movement. Nothing there happens by chance. Nothing is improvised. Everything was designed to reduce human unpredictability to the lowest possible level. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of life at ADX Florence is the routine, or rather, the endless repetition of that routine. Every day follows almost the exact same pattern. Wake up, receive food through the slot, remain inside the cell, wait. Eventually, the inmate may be taken to what the prison calls exercise. But even that does not mean freedom. The exercise space is often described by former inmates as a human kennel. It is a small yard surrounded by extremely high concrete walls and a metal grate overhead. The prisoner is taken there alone, no company, no interaction. There he can walk for a few minutes or up to an hour, depending on the circumstances. But there is no nature, no horizon, no fully open sky. The feeling of confinement never disappears. After that, he returns to the cell, and the cycle continues, day after day, week after week, year after year. Many inmates spend decades living within this pattern, without speaking to others, without touching another human being, without participating in any form of collective activity. The consequences of this level of extreme isolation have drawn attention from psychologists and human rights organizations over the years. Numerous reports from former inmates and attorneys describe deep psychological effects. Some prisoners report hallucinations, others develop intense anxiety. There are cases of severe depression, loss of time perception, repetitive behaviors. Some inmates spend hours walking in circles inside their cells. Others talk to themselves. Some scream. There are also cases of prisoners who simply stop reacting. They remain in absolute silence, almost motionless, as if the mind had slowly disconnected from the world. For critics of the system, ADX Florence represents an experiment in extreme sensory isolation. But for prison authorities, the facility serves a specific purpose. It exists to deal with individuals who, according to the government, cannot be controlled in any other environment. Among the inmates who have been held at ADX Florence are some of the most dangerous criminals in recent history, terrorists responsible for international attacks, drug cartel leaders, violent gang figures, and individuals who remained a threat even within other prisons. Some of these men were sent there after organizing attacks against guards or attempting to control criminal networks from behind bars. For the government, the logic is simple. If a prisoner can continue influencing the outside world, then the system has failed. And ADX was created precisely to prevent that. All communication with the outside world is strictly monitored. Letters are inspected. Phone calls are extremely limited. Visits take place behind thick glass, with no physical contact. No handshakes, no embraces, nothing. The message is clear. Inside those walls, power ends. Even so, the existence of the prison continues to spark intense debate. Lawyers and human rights experts question whether prolonged isolation can be considered a form of psychological torture. Some studies suggest that the human brain was not designed to endure such extreme levels of solitude. Others argue that the system is necessary to protect guards, other inmates, and society. The truth is that ADX Florence represents a difficult dilemma. How do you deal with individuals considered too dangerous, even for the traditional prison system? There is no simple answer. But while that debate continues, The prison operates exactly the same way. Silent, rigid, impenetrable. To this day, there has never been a successful escape from ADX Florence. Not one. And perhaps that is the strongest sign that the system works exactly as it was designed. Not only to prevent physical escape, but to completely sever the connection between the inmate and the world. For many prisoners, the greatest impact is not the cell, not the food, not the constant surveillance. It is time, or rather, the absence of any change in time. When every day is identical to the last, weeks blend into months, months turn into years, and the human mind begins to lose its reference points. Former staff members report that many inmates start measuring time in strange ways, counting steps, observing the light that enters through the narrow slit in the wall, marking invisible lines in their memory, anything that helps maintain a sense of reality. Because inside ADX Florence, there is a silent phenomenon. The men there do not just serve sentences, they disappear socially. The world continues outside, cities grow, technology evolves, people age, families move on with their lives. But for those inside, the universe shrinks to a few square meters of concrete. And perhaps that is what makes this place so unsettling. It is not a place of constant violence. It is not a scene of chaos. It is the exact opposite. It is an environment of extreme order, silent, controlled, a place where everything was designed to eliminate unpredictability. A place where isolation is not an accident. It is the central objective. And when we think about that for a few seconds, one inevitable question emerges. What happens to the human mind when the world disappears completely? When there is no conversation, no touch, no change? When all that exists are concrete walls and the distant sound of metal doors closing? Perhaps we will never fully know, because the men who live there rarely tell their stories. And when they do, their words often sound like echoes from a place few can truly imagine. A place where loneliness is not just a feeling. It is an architectural structure, a routine, a policy, a sentence. And in the silent desert of Colorado, ADX Florence continues to operate exactly as it was designed. No riots, no escapes, no crowds, only concrete, metal, and time. If you want to keep exploring the most disturbing secrets of human history, subscribe to The Hidden, because some of the world's most unsettling stories are still hidden.